Hi, this is Jason Pearl, Senior Vice President and Chief Business Development Officer for the San Francisco Giants, and this is One-on-One with ADC Partners.
Hi, this is Dave Almy of ADC Partners, and thanks so much for listening to this podcast. This episode is actually kind of momentous for a couple of reasons. First, it features an in-depth conversation with longtime friend and colleague Jason Pearl, the Chief Business Development Officer of the San Francisco Giants. Jason's been involved with developing partnerships for the team for 30 years. 30 years! Suffice it to say, he's forgotten more about creating successful partnerships than most people will learn in their lifetimes. We discuss the evolution of corporate partnerships, why they are more important now than ever, the importance of curiosity in his job, and so much more. This episode is also momentous because it's the first one I've done live since the beginning of the pandemic. Can't even begin to tell you how nice it was to head into San Francisco on a gorgeous summer day, walk through the doors of one of baseball's most beautiful ballparks, and talk to my friend Jason. Hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed recording.
We've known each other a long time. I mean, we go back to your days when you were at Candlestick Park. And I mean, one of the best offices probably in the history of sports is in Candlestick Park. I know you have fond memories of that. But I remember when we first met, like this ballpark that we're currently sitting in right now was still considered kind of controversial. Right? There was like, oh, we can't have a downtown ballpark. It changed the character of the city and traffic, and it was a really long, extended period of time where we wasn't even sure that this was going to be built. And so you look at it now, and it's such a fixture of the city that it's almost hard to imagine what San Francisco would be like without it. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that for a minute, like what this ballpark actually means to San Francisco, what it means to the team to be downtown, and how people have engaged with it over the years.
I mean, it's a great point, and hard for me to not have a pretty biased perspective on what it means to the city of San Francisco
it's
and
everything.
What it took to get it done.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you looking back at when we first met and started talking about this, and it was controversial and also sort of a pipe dream in terms of how it was going to get financed and built. So
because there were like 10 iterations of a downtown ballpark about where it was going to go.
5 ballot measures that were shot down. So, I mean, if you want to go all the way back, that's what led to
we're
the
here.
team.
We might as well. We'll just dive back into the depths of the well.
So the story is, I mean, the previous owner of the Giants, Bob Lurie, tried 5 times to get a ballpark built.
Yeah.
4 times in San Francisco and 1 time in San Jose. And
San Jose.
the most recent one was right before the earthquake.
Yep.
The ballot measure was November. The earthquake happened in October. Of course, an earthquake happens and the huge damage that was done to the city and the infrastructure, no one has the appetite to spend public money to build a ballpark. So that got shut down, and barely got shut down.
Even at that point in time.
Even at that point. It barely failed.
So you're clear there's appetite.
There's appetite
Yeah.
to keep the because it really was the classic keep the team in San Francisco. And what the Giants mean to San Francisco, and you think, God, if the Giants had left.
Yeah.
Like that's the real story, Dave, not necessarily what would happen if we were still playing in San Francisco and not here in a downtown ballpark, but what if the Giants left and they were ready to
They were
leave?
almost Tampa Bay, right?
Well, it sort of gets into how I got involved. So
Okay.
that was 1992
Ooh.
when Bob Lurie sold the team to a group out of Tampa.
Right.
And when Larry Baer and Peter McGowan got together and said, we can't let this happen. And so they got a group of civic-minded business leaders in San Francisco and sort of the who's who of San Francisco icons, from Charles Schwab.
I remember when they called me.
You were on the B list.
I'm not sure I was even on the B list.
No, you were not on the B list. I was trying to be kind. But
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, so, anyway, they got a group together to raise enough money and appeal to Major League Baseball to overturn the sale with a commitment to build a facility.
So that was the hinge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the hinge, figuring out how to do it.
Right.
So that was 1993. And I joined the Giants the same time with the new ownership.
1993. So you're coming up on, I don't, I'm not a math guy. like you are, but that's closing in on 30 years.
This is my 30th season.
This is your 30th baseball season with the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah.
You started at Candlestick with the howling winds, the middle of nowhere, and you now walk to work in one of the ballparks that's considered the crown jewels of Major League Baseball. Does it ever get old? You ever walk around this kind of forget where you are, or is it still a moment of, this is pretty cool?
The honest truth is, yeah, it gets old. I mean,
Yeah.
this is 30 years of doing anything. It honestly will get, there's some repetition in whatever you're doing, but I remind myself constantly what a great life, career, opportunity, experience every day.
All right.
And I'm looking out the window right now at our ballpark, and we got a day game today, and seeing people come down here and seeing boats starting to show up in Covey Cove. And
Well, the other thing we're doing as I'm looking out the same window is I'm seeing a lot of construction cranes, right? And when this ballpark first landed, there was nothing down there.
there's nothing anywhere.
There was nothing. And now it's probably one of the most vibrant pieces of the city. Obviously, the Giants are going to take all the credit for that, but it's sort of interesting to see how, when everybody talks about urban development and whether or not stadiums represent the way that public money should be spent. I mean, you kind of look out the window here and go, well, it's probably not the whole reason, but it had to have played a role.
Our argument all along, we wanted to build this facility, and we sort of jumped over sort of how this got passed by the city of San Francisco. There was no public money that was invested in building this ballpark. This is all privately financed.
Right.
So
Forgot about that.
it's a bit of a layup for the city of San Francisco, for the community to support what we were doing here. And that was the big difference. Like all the other ballot measures had most, if not all, of the dollars required coming from public subsidies. And your question, I mean, sort of getting back around to
We're covering a lot of ground.
Yeah, we're covering a lot of ground here, but building sports facilities in cities, is that worth public money? And I would say there's never a sort of black and white answer to that. It's filled with all sorts of nuance and sort of where it's going to be built, how it's going to be built, what it's going to mean to the community. And
Every market's a little different.
every market's going to be completely different. And here, what this meant in terms of the southeastern tip of San Francisco, which was empty warehouses and parking lots. Our argument all along was this was going to be an anchor that was going to help revitalize the community, and that's what's happened. And look, you can argue that building this ballpark was the sole reason. It wasn't. I mean, the city has expanded dramatically in 20 years since this ballpark was built. And this area was ripe for redevelopment. But having this here was a destination for
pretty
bringing
significant
people
anchor associated with
No
it.
doubt, no doubt.
And I forget, too, and thank you for bringing it up. I had forgotten, because I'm just frankly not that smart a guy, that this was a privately financed ballpark. There was a period of time when the Giants weren't so popular amongst the other owners because he so successfully managed to do this whole thing with private money.
Yep.
And that is certainly not the case with the majority of sports teams today, who are very much in the pocket of, or trying to get their hands into the pocket of the public offers.
I don't think there's been one built that's entirely private since this.
Like I said, I'm not a smart man, but I'm being hard pressed to think of one as either.
Well, we should follow up on that because I'm curious myself. I'm not aware of any that have been built. I think there's now pressure on teams to put their own money into the facility, and Levi's had their money in there as well as public money in it as well.
Yep.
Chase is all private.
Mm-hmm. The Warriors place.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they also had the creative financing with the seat licenses and everything like that.
Well,
too.
that's
So,
what we did too. I mean, that's the model.
Yeah.
So it can happen, and frankly, timing the economy is the only way it kind of works, and that's how it worked here. And I know you had a question about, you're going to ask me because I can see these things about.
God, you know me so well. Yeah. It's embarrassing. I'm just a blank sheet before you.
Well, it's just fairly obvious. And we're going to play poker later on. The tell of, but your question about the .com boom.
Yeah.
And that's kind of was the
coincided.
The tailwind we had going into building this, which both affected selling seat licenses, and we took a different approach to selling seat licenses than others had done before us. We can get into that separately, but getting the corporate support.
To cover, man. Do we have enough time? Can we do a 9-hour podcast?
Well, I thought this was a series.
volumes 6 and 7 dropping soon.
Yes.
Now you brought up earlier, it's a little bit ago, like this is your 30th season.
Yeah.
Now that's not common with most professional sports franchises. A lot of people come and go, turnover, heading to opportunities and things like that. But here's the thing about the Giants, right? You're not the exception with this. Right? There is a group of people that have been here for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you brought up, Larry Baer, but Brian Sabian, Shane Adam, Russ Stanley, Brian Srabian, Mario Alioto. These are people who have all been here more than 20 years with a single team. I mean, speaking of things, you can't think of public financing going into other states. I can't think of any front office that has had that level of stability in the executive ranks ever. So, what makes this place so clearly special to work for? What brings that stability? What's the secret sauce?
Well, I don't know, Dave, if there's secret sauce. I mean, again, I'm certainly proud of my tenure with the Giants. And while I am, 30 years is a lot, there's, I'm going to say, a half a dozen current employees who have been here longer than me, and as you mentioned, several who have in the same vein. I think it starts with a stable owner and a stable ownership group. So there are franchises that have a similar situation that have had the same owner or ownership group for a long time. And then leadership. I mean, I think I can't say enough about Larry's, obviously, skill as a leader of an organization, but his ability to create opportunity for people and to inspire collaboration, I think has kept a lot of us together. I mean, I think it's been and good people, obviously. You don't stick around unless you're working with good, smart, talented people. It is pretty outstanding how many of us have been. And we're having some transitions now, so we're, a mature organization, let's put it that way, that needs to continue to evolve to face the challenges of what's coming next. And I think those of us who've been around for a long time have to keep reminding ourselves that we have to think differently too.
I've had the benefit of being able to work with you and just know you for a long time, but we've also, with my business partner Andy and I, we've had a chance to work with some of those other folks that I just read off. And I mean, this is also important to recognize that these are not just fill-in-the-gap people. These are people who are really exceptional at what they do, that were drawn to an organization that was clearly trying to do special things, whether it's building the stadium or constructing the team. So I guess there's a point where you can say excellence draws excellence in that regard. People are drawn to that, and the results kind of speak for themselves. I mean, this is, like we talked about at the top of our conversation, the Giants are one of the leading shining stars for Major League Baseball, and I'm assuming the front office and that stability and that excellence is part of that equation for them.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but again, no one sort of looks at that and says, okay, we're good. It's pushing towards more and more innovation and opportunity and challenges. And, and I mentioned Larry and his ability to create opportunity. I mean, you think about what we've accomplished at this ballpark, and you think about the things that we're all able to touch base on. So we're not sort of stuck in our silos of what we do day in and day out, but we get to look at new opportunities. And I know your vast number of listeners can't see
both of
what we're looking at. Yeah, both.
Thanks, Mom.
Hi, Almy kids. But across the channel here, we're looking at Mission Rock, which is a development that we are doing in partnership with Tishman Speyer in the city of San Francisco. And a number of us have had the opportunity to learn a ton about urban development and building a neighborhood and thinking about things differently. So that creates opportunities.
But this also kind of goes back to the idea of private funding too, right? That puts a much more aggressive business case for the team heading out of the gate. If you privately finance your ballpark and you have to pay the debt load and all the things that go with that, you have to be creative. Mm-hmm. You have to be constantly seeking new revenue opportunities versus, hey, we've got all this public money or skating, whatever kind of standpoint. Does that play into, you think, the culture of the team?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So innovation is something that we constantly have to look for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And new revenue streams.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because you're in charge of a pretty significant revenue stream associated with the Giants. And it started with I think started with partnerships when you were back all the way back at Candlestick, and it's really grown to be a pretty immense portfolio that you have at the Giants, right? But I want to really focus in on partnerships because it's still a big part. If not, I don't know, is it all of what you do right now, or has your role expanded to include other revenue as well?
No, it includes other revenue streams as well. So it's sort of my scope is looking at, I would say, non-traditional revenue opportunities, and then media revenue, related media opportunities, mission rock and sort of ancillary revenue associated with our development. But things like, overseeing our youth camp program, our fantasy camp program, our Hispanic outreach program, licensing programs, those sort of fall under my area.
But I'm interested in partnerships for a reason. First of all, because you and I have worked on partnerships in the past, and when you have a 30-year window to look back on, you've seen, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, the boom cycle of the first .com wave, right, that came through and helped fund the ballpark. That's followed by a pretty significant bust, right? And then you have new booms coming in with another technology piece associated with that. Can you talk a little bit about, as you've evolved and you've come to understand how you approach this business, what are those approaches and philosophies with business development and creating sound partnerships that have sort of been a common thread throughout that sort of elevated and depressed economic cycles that go along with that? Like what are those common themes that you think back and it's like, well, these have served me well?
As usual, Dave, you ask a question that covers a whole
But I expect you to synopsize this because we're running out of time. So give me like a haiku of your philosophy.
A haiku. God. Look, it starts and ends with people and relationships. I mean, we're in a relationship business. So, I think my philosophy is pretty basic, which is treat people with respect.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, I know. Can you believe that? And it's cliche. Listen to people, understand what their objectives are, hear them out when there are problems, solve the problems, and always strive to over-deliver. And look, we've had tremendous success here with building partnerships, long-standing partnerships, and similar to how you described the tenure of the executive team here, I'm super proud of the tenure of our family of partners. I mean, I could name, a dozen right now partners who've been with us for 20 plus years. And I think that happens because we do our very best to deliver upon our promises and then face challenges directly. I mean, COVID is probably a great example. I mean, no one could do anything about what was happening with the pandemic. We didn't have baseball games. We approached our clients. We were, I think, generous in our approach that, hey, look, if this doesn't work, we will do whatever it takes to make sure you're happy.
Yeah.
And to the majority of our partners, we're with you through thick and thin, and we'll get through this.
Is that is it communication? How do you establish that rapport with these folks, right? But I mean, if you have a client that's been around for 20 years, clearly, I mean, you know the people about as well as a client as you possibly can, right? That's where they make that transition from being a client to, let's go out to lunch, you're just friend. You're their friends.
Yeah,
it's like the best part of this business is those kind of evolutions. With new clients, so when you're trying to establish that rapport, how do you go about doing that, right? Because businesses come in and out of this market fast.
Yeah.
How do you, have you found success in that regard?
I think you hit it in your initial statement, which is communication is key. Like, people need to hear from you, whether you have an answer or whether you can resolve the problem right away. They need to be heard.
Yeah.
And we need to be proactive in reaching out. So, I mean, no one does this perfectly, and we sought feedback from long-standing partners as well as new partners as to what we can do better throughout the last few years and the challenges that we all faced.
Yeah.
But we were sending out communication regularly. We were picking up the phone and talking to people and trying to really face those challenges. And the same token, the Giants weren't that different from other organizations and industries in terms of challenges with staffing and morale.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been difficult for everybody. So we were trying to do all this with a skeleton crew in many ways.
Have sponsors' expectations changed dramatically when you think back to how this started, right? Obviously, everything digital has come in. It's kind of funny to think about, right? There was, we were dialing up on AOL when you started. Was there even an AOL? I can't even remember.
I think maybe one of the first deals we did, I want to say you were associated with this because it feels like you should have been, but CompuServe. That feels like something you would have done.
There are a bunch of people,
Yeah.
well, both my kids who are listening to this right now are scratching their head and saying, what the expletive is a CompuServe? But it's remarkable to think that that started as this sort of like, is this ever going to catch on? And is now like the dominant form of how companies are doing their marketing right now. So when you think back about what expectations have come with partnerships, what's changed dramatically and how have the giants responded to some of those changes?
Forget the specific entitlements and assets and activations.
Yeah.
I think what has changed is the business of sports marketing and sports sponsorships has grown so dramatically and has become a bigger part of marketing budgets for most consumer-facing and also B2B-facing companies. It's something that for a long time was totally a discretionary spend. Yeah, we need some tickets. Yeah, suite's great.
Yeah.
And we like to see our sign. That's really cool.
Right. Owner loves the Giants, so
Yeah.
let's watch the Giants.
And there were consumer brands. I mean, you think about Coca-Cola and
Yeah.
Budweiser and, Chevrons and AT&Ts back in the day. Like, yes, branding. The difference now is because there's so much invested in the relationship that data and measurable tools are hugely important in what we do. So back in the day, it was like, okay, thanks for your sponsorship. We'll take it out to lunch, shake your hand at the end
Here's
of
a
the year.
picture of your sign for the deck.
Exactly. To now we are sending out reports on a regular basis about ratings information, Nielsen information, covering the value of signage. We're doing recaps of events to make sure that those who are investing in this partnership have the data to share with their teams.
So give them the tools to be able to do the reporting that they do.
Have to.
Yeah.
Have to.
Right, because they want to make sure that because of the dollars involved. So it kind of brings up an interesting question too, and I'm interested in your perspective on this. Your point is there's so many more dollars being invested. This is a bigger slice of marketing pies than it has been in the past. Do you have a sense of why that is? Why is partnerships and sponsorships becoming more important to companies as they look to build bridges to consumers or other businesses?
Well, I mean, I have an opinion on this, but the amount of opportunities, the number of opportunities to advertise and market has become so vast, especially with the creation of so many digital assets. How do you stand out?
Yeah.
How do you attach yourself to something that has meaning to your customers? And so I think sports sponsorships and live entertainment still, not only still, but are unique in their ability to deliver that value, measurable value, and stand out differently than other marketing and mass media.
Yeah, okay.
If that makes sense.
It makes total sense, right? As mass media, it seems like attention is falling. Like linear TV, which we used to just call TV, had its moment in the sun, and people's attention is so scattered all over so many different forms of media that they can consume on a day in, day out basis that there's value in partnering with something that makes people go, oh, it's the Giants. They look over there because they're naturally inclined to do so. It's something they're passionate about. And I think, we talk about passion and the importance associated with partnerships and with the role that it plays there, but it's ever more vital now too, because it really does kind of grab someone by the chin and make them look over there. And that's really what this is all about, is capturing attention. So I appreciate what you're saying about the importance that this plays in the greater slice that it plays inside a marketing department and the interest.
Yeah, and a couple of things I would just touch upon. One is people's ability to consume content in so many different ways. The last bastion for must-watch live is sports.
Yep.
So that becoming more and more important when it comes to just straight branding opportunities.
Sports business podcasts really high on that as well.
It's coming.
Yeah. The wave is building. You can feel it gather.
Build that audience, yes. Is this being sponsored by anybody? I got to make sure that
the San Francisco Giants. Thank you, by the way, to the San Francisco Giants for underwriting this entire cost of this podcast.
Our pleasure. The other thing I was going to point to is our ability to provide integrated packages and opportunities for clients, mostly turnkey. So if you're thinking about how do I create a package of opportunities that can include traditional marketing benefits like branding and media, along with a community outreach program, along with crafted experiences and hospitality and engagement opportunities in one place, that's kind of what we have to offer that's different from other advertising.
Flexibility.
Yeah.
Right, you can shift and move to a variety of different channels depending on the need of the client, and we talk about this quite a lot. Like the benefit associated with this is if look, something's not working,
Pivot.
we can shift,
Yep.
we can pivot. What's going to work, right? And that's not something a lot of other channels, media channels, otherwise, can claim.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefit associated with that. We're kind of in an interesting boom right now, although the boom is kind of slackening a little bit. I think it's fair to say. You saw the dot-com boom come and go, Web 1.0 in the late 90s, early aughts. And now we're in this kind of crypto, currency, NFTs, what had been a boom. I think some of the bloom is off that rose right now, at least a little bit. I'm interested in whether you see echoes of what you saw in the past with dot-coms, or is this category set up to weather the storm a little better? So just predict the outcome for cryptocurrency. That's all I'm asking you to do.
I did, no problem. I got this. It's a fair question, though, in the sense of, the similarities in sort of the dot-com boom and the questioning of how sustainable is this? Are these companies real? They have no real revenue stream.
Because I'm old enough to remember man.com, right? The man.com fascia panel right behind home plate. I know that's one of the ones, Hall of Fame type stuff.
Well, you do know the story about the man.com.
All right, let's take a quick, let's do the sidebar right now. Man.com.
Well, someone brought this opportunity to us, and it was relayed to me that this was Theman.com. And I was, what is Theman.com? And it was explained, no, it's the man.com. But it was, the creative looked like Theman.com. I didn't know what it was.
Theman.
Anyway, there are a lot of those businesses. So look, our job is to try to do our best to understand the business, but also to, if people have money and it's a respectable business, to help them create that brand that hopefully leads to their success.
Right, they're coming to you with a problem that they're trying to solve, and I think like crypto and NFTs, like the market that you people, that sports teams like the Giants deliver is pretty spot on. So
it's a matter of trying to pick the right horse.
Yep.
Or horses, so that we're associating ourselves with those who are going about their business the right way, as best as possible. And this is an unknown space. And your question about is cryptocurrency or is the blockchain going to survive? I don't know, but I wouldn't bet against it given all the people who are investing $1 gazillion in the industry.
There is certainly enough financial backing behind this and interest in seeing it through. And I suspect that maybe there's going to be ebbs and flows just like there is for the other businesses.
You can talk, look, you can talk about lots of different businesses, and you can talk about ride-sharing businesses, Uber and Lyft, and where they are these days versus where we're going with autonomous vehicles. You can talk about, companies that are ahead of their time.
But this is also one of the unique qualities of working for the Giants, too. You're in San Francisco. A lot of these technologies live, mature, and die in San Francisco. Is it an interesting part of your job? People coming to you and explaining what the hell they're trying to do, and you get to kind of sit there and go, this is either A, super cool, or what the heck is Theman?
Yes and yes and yes. All this stuff is so super cool to see where the future in front of you, and trying to understand, certainly lots of times you go, this will never work. That's crazy. And you can even put Uber, I'm not getting to someone else's car and going for a ride.
It'll never work.
That's ludicrous. I was going to mention Webvan.
Yeah.
Webvan was a huge partner of ours
partner.
when we opened this ballpark. And you look at where delivery services are today and go, wait, Webvan was way ahead of their time. It was truly
ahead of their time.
Ahead of their time, and they couldn't stem the tide of getting consumers to appreciate what they were trying to build.
We talk a lot about the importance of curiosity in this business. And I suspect it's particularly true here, right? Because there are so many new businesses coming to you and saying, hey, we think the Giants is a great opportunity to associate with this. Plus the outbound looking that you're always doing. Can you talk about the role of curiosity for yourself in looking for new business opportunities and what you do to stay on top of different trends and things like that?
You can't be successful in what we're doing unless you are curious about both how traditional businesses are looking to evolve and change and what their objectives are. That's one of the best things about my job is, I just talk about this to a lot of people, which is my day is filled with meetings with companies from who are focused on all different things. So it never gets boring.
Right.
You know, whether I'm talking to Ghirardelli about the next hot fudge sundae that they're about to launch and what we can do to support that.
I'm excited.
You should be, because it's going to be right up your alley.
Okay.
To, you know, Oracle and what they're trying to do to address significant technology challenges, and all over the map from, you know, everywhere in between. So
it's hard. You kind of have to be a little bit proficient in all these different industries, but ultimately they're kind of sort of drilled down.
Shallow and wide.
Yeah, shallow and wide. I mean, that's what I appreciate. But I mean, in the end, while they come from such different sectors, right, and they're doing such different things, ultimately their objectives all kind of start to blend together, right? There's not a huge amount of difference between Ghirardelli Square trying to launch a new Sunday and make sure that people are aware of that, and Oracle trying to make sure that people are aware of database concerns or where their technology is going.
Yes and no. I mean, there is sort of an approach to consumer-focused branding versus business-to-business focused branding.
Yeah.
And what we have here in San Francisco, which we talk about a lot, is the idea that our consumers, our fans, are actually business decision makers too.
Right.
So the two do overlap quite a bit. They're those who want to buy hot fudge sundaes for themselves and for their family, and they're also making tremendous investments in technology for their companies. Mm-hmm. So there's really good overlap there. But you mentioned curiosity, and one thing that we are doing more and more of that falls into my area is a focus on startup companies. Because what we've been able to create here is also an opportunity for startups who come to us trying to solve a challenge that is real or imagined. Clear is a good example. You know, we did a partnership with Clear 6 or 7 years ago when they were only doing biometric security screenings at airports.
Right.
And their vision was, hey, this is something that works, you know, as we think about security threats at large venues, how can we provide services to help make an event more secure and also frictionless for fans to
improve fan experience.
Yeah, to enter. And we helped them create that, even though that wasn't on the sort of radar for other venues. And now it is. I mean, now this is.
You start to see it everywhere.
Yeah,
so I didn't realize the Giants were one of the first places they deployed
we were the first
Yeah.
to do that with Clear. But my point being is that they helped us solve a real challenge. And there's lots of startups that say, oh, good, I see that you have a challenge with ticketing or concessions or something else. And what I love is being able to think about that and say, okay, well, that does make some sense. How can we help you? And these are companies that don't have big marketing budgets, but there's got to be something in it for us too. So we get the opportunity to earn sweat equity in a community of startups that makes sense for us. So this isn't sort of us saying, okay, well, there's a startup that is solving a problem that has no relevance to what we do here. Our value that we add is help them beta test, prove their point with our organization or through our venue.
Which takes it so far beyond just simple marketing and
of
partnerships.
Course.
Like, it's partnership in the truest sense of the word. We're going to help you actualize the business model that you're trying to put on and see if this place that we call home at the ballpark is a place where you can do that.
And I bring that up only in your sense of curiosity, because to me that is what's really cool.
Right, because if you stick focus just on, well, you know, these are the signs that we have and the seats that are available, you're never going to get to that point with that particular piece of business.
No, problem solving, I mean, and that's one of the things, again, I wouldn't be doing this for 30 years if I didn't really enjoy listening to people as they talk about their product or service and thinking about how we can help them solve problems.
Let's shift a little bit, because there's a specific thing I know that's on your desk right now, and I'm interested to see how this is going to come together, which is for the first time, Major League Baseball is going to allow teams to sell the patch on the uniform, that 4x4 patch, and the Padres, I think, were the first ones to do it with Motorola. You hired WME to come and help you land a sleeve partner, and I'm wondering if you can go into the process to about, like, okay, you have an accomplished team here, let's bring in a third party. What was the decision-making process trying to go outside to help procure that partner, and why you didn't call me to help you do
it? Back to you being on the B list, I was just about to get there, dude. A great question, and we're super excited about what baseball is doing to help provide teams opportunities to grow the revenue pie. And I know baseball isn't usually in the sort of leading the pack, sort of coming up second or third, and but the time is right. I mean, I think corporate branding on jerseys and uniforms and kits is something that is acceptable globally, and so I'm glad we have this opportunity. To get to your question about WME and an agency in general, our first reaction is no, we're going to do this ourselves. Thanks. We got a lot of inquiries from agencies saying, hey, we want to help you both in terms of measuring the value of what a patch can do and then helping you get out there and sell it.
Right.
Ultimately, what it came down to is, yes, we have an outstanding team of people here, and I take a lot of pride in being able to do these things internally, is the recognition that, look, there's a really good chance that our partner for the jersey patch is going to be someone we know, either an existing partner or someone here in the Bay Area. When I say someone, a company here in the Bay Area that's got deep roots, and we can talk to them and make it happen. But there's just as much chance, as you look at the landscape of how patches have come together in the NBA and elsewhere, that it's going to be a company that we've never heard of, that you've never heard of.
Right. I mean, who's the Lakers partner right now? It's South Korean company.
Yeah. So we felt like we needed to get some help in sort of looking at it from whether it's an international company or it's a domestic company that is making headways in a new space and looking for this kind of brand exposure, that our best bet was to have more people out there identifying that opportunity.
I mean, if you're going to partner with someone, WME is probably about as good as a partner, right? Scale and scope, reach. It's an international company that can probably reach into just about any of their corporate offices and find 2 or 3 possibilities for the Giants to find that and land that partner. Because this is a pretty significant piece of revenue that's going to come from this jersey. Do you have expectations on what that's going to bring?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to reveal that now, or no, not even a little bit?
It's going to be a pretty penny.
Just whisper it to me. So how often? What's that working?
I just think that ADC partners on our jersey would be an excellent fit.
It is a fantastic idea.
We'll work on that.
I'm going to take that back to the office and workshop it for 30 seconds. What's the working relationship like with WME? Is that a weekly kind of thing? Is this like, I mean, given the size and importance of the asset, I mean, is this?
Look, we went with WME. We talked to, I want to say, 6 or 7 different agencies. All were great and had different approaches to how we would do this. We felt like WME, to your point, gave us the best chance to be successful, not just because of the agency and their history and their reach, but the people and good friends who are building their property business over there. Joe Januszewski, Lorenzo Sciarro, and Jen Flynn, who are running point on our partnership. We have a weekly meeting, but we talk a lot more than that.
Right. Because this goes back to your point earlier, because it's so visible. I mean, you're essentially talking about a brand being directly associated with your brand in probably the most conspicuous way possible, that it's important about the company you keep, right? You really have to do some vetting. Have you put any guidelines about like where you hope or expectations for categories that you're going to be looking at, or is it really
I think we're
the
wide
universe
open.
is open?
The universe is open. I mean, you're right. We want to have the right brand fit.
And yet you
Baseball
consider ADC partners. Interesting.
We're thinking about it. We have to be a premium on that. Major League Baseball has some guidelines as to what we can and can't do, and categories and how that makes sense. But we're looking for a great fit, and we're looking for the right brand that makes sense for the San Francisco Giants.
Major League Baseball, like you said, is not usually the one on the front end of these kinds of things, but we're seeing a lot of effort from the league to create new revenue for teams, but also change the way the game is perceived, right? Take away maybe what had been considered stodgy, or you got the DHs in both leagues now. You've got runners on second base to begin extra innings. Are you seeing results from some of these experiments? Or are you feeling like a buzz associated with it?
These things don't happen because someone decides willy-nilly that we should try this. They get tested. They get tested in our minor league system. They get vetted through various groups that get a chance to sort of provide an opinion on it, and they don't all work. What I respect about what's going on is there's a balancing act in baseball. Baseball is a traditional sport, and for every person that is saying baseball has to change its rules and get faster and more relevant and have more offense, just as many people are saying baseball's baseball, don't change anything.
Right.
And so whatever we end up doing to make changes, you're going to make half the people excited or interested and half the people angry. I think the rule changes are great. I don't agree with all of them, but I really appreciate the desire to improve and to facilitate changing a traditional game to meet sort of the next generation of fans. And I think the stuff that we're doing now does that.
Jason Pearl of the San Francisco Giants, thanks very much for joining me today on this podcast. But before I let you go, I've got some lightning round questions for you that I'm going to ask. And all I want is quick, first thing that come to your head responses associated with this. And this is a gotcha moment.
Oh boy.
Are you ready?
No, but let's go.
Good, that's what I like to hear. All right, ready? First one. Best food item at Oracle Park that isn't garlic fries?
Crazy crab sandwich.
Best place to relax in the city of San Francisco?
To relax in the city of San Francisco. I'm going to say Fort Funston.
Okay. This is a lightning round, so this sort of weird introspection that you're doing after I ask the question should stop immediately.
Okay.
I'm not even editing out that pause. Okay. You originally thought you were going to be a doctor. At the end of a 2-week homestand, do you ever wish you were?
Never.
Never wish you were a doctor. Okay. Best Giants memory that doesn't involve winning a World Series?
Sitting here having an interview with Dave Almy.
Okay. Introspection and sarcasm are both.
You said to speak first thing that came to mind. That's okay. I can't have it both ways.
Okay. Favorite ballpark to visit, other than Oracle?
Wrigley Field.
What's the one thing you miss about Candlestick Park?
Nothing.
Not even one thing? Not even like the exposed asbestos?
I would say the Curly Greaves press dining room.
Jason Pearl of the San Francisco Giants, thanks very much for joining me.
You bet, Dave. Good to see you.
Thanks for listening to this ADC Partners podcast. For more information about ADC Partners, please visit our website at adcpartners.com.